So what we want to do is we currently have it where if we press the arrow keys, we can move around. If you'd like to switch it, right, from maybe WASD versus the arrow key, you can do key code dot, and you can see there's a W. So if I save this now, and I press play, you can see I'm pushing W on my keyboard. So in turn, right, this would be, let's see, this is my back, so it'd be S, right? This is A, and then this is D. So it's just another way of doing WASD, like if you want to do WASD keyboard controls. So that's sort of an alternative for you. Um, so whatever you like. And what I'm going to do now, though, is let's talk a little bit about how we can trigger our animations. So back on our guy here, which is our Cano, remember we were talking about we have this Cano controller, right, which is down here. And right now our entry point we created is just an idle. What we want to do is transition from idle to walk. So go ahead and make sure you click on parameters here. And I'm going to add a parameter here. And I'm going to add a Boolean. And I'm just going to call this walk. Notice that it's all lowercase. Now, in order to transition from idle to walk, you have to create a transition. I'm going to right click here and I'm going to do make transition. And I'm just going to left click on walk here. And if you click on this arrow, it says the list is empty, right? And the reason for that, here, let's grab our Cano model and drop them in here, is I don't actually have an idle animation, right? So it doesn't let me preview it, right? Because this one has a walk, but this one does not have any sort of animation in there. We can create one on like a 0 frame. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're gonna go ahead and hit plus here, and I'm gonna name this IDLE, and I'm just gonna make it from frame 0 to frame 1, right? So just a 1 frame animation, and I'm gonna hit apply. And so if I press play, you know, it's kind of got a little glitch there. Um, and honestly, if we make it from 0 to 0, I don't know if it'll let us do that. Let's hit apply. Yeah, that's actually better. So that way we don't get any weird animation stuff. So in the idle here, you notice there's no motion. I can actually expand this, and that newly created idle will appear here. And so I'm going to drag and drop that there. And now when I click this transition, you can see it'll actually play the transition between the idle to walk, right? So how do we trigger this? Well, what I want to say, right, I have this selected, is if walk is true, then I'm going to have it go from here to here. So now if I press play and I check this on, you can see it went to walk and now he's walking. Now, if this is false, I want it to go back. So let me right click on this, make transition, click back on idle, and I'm going to select this arrow going up, hit this button, and I'm going to set this to false. So now when I press play, you can see it enters this entry and it doesn't leave. But if I check this on, my character's walking, right? It continues to walk, but when I uncheck this, it returns to idle. So let's go ahead and do some fancy coding that's going to access this animation controller, which is on my Cano model, right? So back in my script here, I need to create a variable that will store a reference to the animator here. So what I can do is I can just say public, right, animator. We got to make this capital here, animator. And so it knows that, oh, Alex is looking for the animator, and I can come up with whatever name I want. I usually just do something like this, anim or animator. Then I hit comma. Now, what I need to do is I need to say, hey, just like there's an add component button here, I need to get this component and store that a reference in that to, sorry, to reference that in here. And we use start before. Remember, start runs at the very beginning of our code, right? So let's get rid of this too, that private start. And actually, let's make this public. So if I write animator equals get component open, close, and I say, hey. And again, don't worry too much about this. I mean, this is the A language, right? So what I'm saying is this animator is going to store a reference to this component. And what it's storing a reference to is the actual animator that's on this object. So let's take a moment and sort of jump back into Unity really quick and take a look at this. So you can see that this is empty here, right? But when I press play, because we have that script in start, it'll actually load in this Cano controller, this animator, right in there for us. So even though it's empty, it'll automatically load that for us. So now this animator variable that we created actually has a reference or a connection to this controller. So how do I trigger that? Well, let's put in a Boolean, right? Because that's all a true and false is. It's a Boolean, just like in math. Let's make a Boolean variable here, and let's just call it walk, okay? And let's say it is equal to false, because we want our character to start off idling, right? But I'm going to copy this walk for a second. If I, instead of get key W, but if this key dot get key, where's that, key down. So if I'm holding down the W key, what I want to do is I want to set this, right? Right off the bat, I want to set this to true. And what I'm going to say here is, I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to say if I release the key, or the key is up, right? And the key that I'm looking to release is this W, I want to set this back to false. That means I'm not walking anymore if I'm not pressing my W, right? So let's go back into here, and I'm going to press the play here, and I'm going to hit W in my scene, right? Come on, what's going on here? Let's see. You know, actually what I'd like to do is, let's actually switch out this logic a little bit. Let's break this into a different method just for now. So we have our fixed update. Let's go ahead and do a just a regular old uh, void update. And what's nice about void update, this also runs every frame. Let's get rid of this for a second. And that's where we're going to sort of look at our setting our animators to true and false. So this is actually controlling our movement. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. And then inside of here, I'm going to say, you know, this code launches our walk animation, right? And then I'm going to do that get key up in here. And I think that will, and let's copy this. Let's get our get key down. Now, by compartmentalizing our code, it doesn't force it to do everything in one section, right? So let's delete this because our code in fixed update is actually moving our character. And all I'm going to do in here is say, hey, if I'm pressing the W down, my walk equals true. I'm playing my walk animation. And then if I release that W key, that means it's up, I want it to go back to idle. So I'm going to set this to false. This actually will probably make it run a little bit cleaner and a lot smoother. And that's just for this W, right? And we don't necessarily need to do it for, well, I guess we could do it for S2 when he's walking backwards. And we're going to edit this where we're going to say if this or something else. So we'll do that in a second. I'll show you that. So if I press play here, all right, now when I press W, I know what the problem is. One thing is we need to exit this. So we're going to uncheck has exit time on both of these. That's one thing. All right. And then let me make sure that, here's my bigger problem here. We are setting walk to true here, right? And we're setting it to false here, but we're not actually doing anything that edits the animation controller, right? So what do I mean by that is we have an animator here, and then we have this parameter. But how are we setting this Boolean, right? That's something I forgot. So what we do is we take the name of our variable here, and because it holds a reference to this, what I can say is animator, right, dot set Boolean, and this takes two parameters, right? And what we're setting it to is I'm going to look for walk here, right? That's the name of it. And the value is walk, and that's true here. And then I'm going to do the same thing here, and I'm going to save that. And let's try that now. Now that animator gets a reference to these guys. So now when I press W, you can see he's walking. Oh, here's my other problem. This is false, right? So let's go back to our code. If my key is down, walk is true. We set animation to walk to W, right? What we're doing is we're updating it too many times. So I'm going to delete this one. So what we're doing is we're checking it every time. So I'm going to cut this. I'm going to paste it out here. So what's happening is this. If we push it, we set it to walk to true. And then this is false, right? Like our key code is not down. So then it plays this, our animator. So let's try that again. I'm going to press play here. And actually, we need to have this on as has exit time. That's our other problem, actually. Now let's try it. That way, what it has exit time means is it'll keep playing that animation over again. Yeah, I have these backwards. If our key is down, we're walking. And if our key is up, we're not walking. Sorry. There we go. So that should make a little bit better sense. So our key is down, right? What are we doing? We're walking, right? There we go. That makes much better sense. And if I release that key, he walks. Now, the thing is, notice that his animation keeps playing even after I do that. That's because it has an exit time. That means I want it to play all the way through. So I don't want that to happen as I'm going from walk to idle, right? And I also don't want my idle animation to play all the way through, which it really doesn't have one now. So I'm going to uncheck both of those. That makes better sense. There we go. So now I'm walking, I release it, stops automatically. If I walk backwards, let's do that one really quickly. So we can do, let's copy this. Now there's something called an OR statement, right? So, and that, what that is if you hold shift and it's the bar next to enter. And what I'm saying here is if we're pressing W or we're pressing S, which is our back, right? Our back key. We want to set walk to false. Let's copy this for here too. So if we're pushing W or S, walk is false is true. Oh, I'm sorry. This should be get key down. Let's change that. All right, so let's explain it. I'm sorry, it's getting a little late. So if we get the key up, it's W. That means we release the key, our walk is false. If our key is down, whether it's either this key or this key, we set our walk to true, and then this updates every time these are set. All right, because it checks this and then it exits this if statement and it looks for this animator.set bool walk, which is this walk here. So let's do that. Let's walk backwards. So I'm walking backwards and that's playing and I'm walking forward. All right, we're going to redo all of this again in the next video for left and right. And then we're going to be doing it again for all the attacks and stuff. So if you're sort of getting it, that's good. And if you're struggling a little bit, that's okay too. Just make sure to keep referencing this.